You said your antecedents go back to the Civil War.
Affirmative.
Were they served under General D or General Grant?
Interesting story on that. My father, Harry Lovejoy Rogers III, by the way, my name, I never changed it. The joke is my husband kept his maiden name. He hates that joke. He's not here to defend himself. He said he never wanted to be Mr. Rogers. Okay. Harry Lovejoy Rogers III is my dad, who just passed away the 6th of February at age 90, highly decorated veteran of World War II, graduated from West Point on D-Day in 1944 and went right into the war. Harry L. Rogers Jr., my grandpa, was in the Army of Occupation after World War I. And Harry L. Rogers I was the first quartermaster general of the United States Army in World War I and worked under General Pershing. His father, Colonel Joseph Sumner Rogers, in the Civil War was left for dead. And this man came and saved him and pulled his sorry body off the battlefield. And he looked up at him and he said, "I'm going to name my firstborn after you." And that man who saved Joseph Sumner was Harry Lovejoy. Harry Lovejoy Rogers all the way through. And that, see, Marty, you probably never knew that. But that's how I'm blessed with such a legacy. And my kids are George Rogers Cunnin and Emily Rogers Cunnin. Except if you look on Facebook, my daughter's Emily Shaquita Cunnin. But whatever. I have a character for a daughter. Our daughter just graduated week before last with 2 degrees from the Barrett Honors College at ASU, a Bachelor of Arts in German, Bachelor of Science in Business. We're very proud of her. 4-year plan, 2 degrees, went straight through, summers included. Our son, after coming back from being a Marine officer, now is 2 years through the 4-year PhD program in electrical engineering, doing research at the Flexible Display Center at ASU. We're very proud of our kids. Sorry, I digress. Marty says I talk too much about my kids, but I can't help it. Yes, sir.
Okay, equivalent Tea Party question. In what section of the Constitution would you find the powers prohibited to Congress?
I know the 10th Amendment says that if it's not described as a power of the federal government, it's to the states or the people. Is that what you're referring to?
No, actually, right after Section 8 is Section 9 of Article 1. It prohibits the Bill of Attainder, ex post facto laws, and a couple of the others I don't have memorized.
Okay, thank you. Writ of habeas corpus. I was a clinical social worker in the Air Force for 3 years before I went to pilot training, and I had a patient who was crazier than you know what, and he told me while he was seated with me in my office at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio, that he got his jollies out of training a rifle out the window at people. So I went and got my next door neighbor, clinical psychologist, to come over and be with me because this guy was dangerous. Long story short, we had him committed, and then he filed a writ of habeas corpus against the U.S. government for holding him against his will. And we all went down to federal court in Cincinnati, and needless to say, the government won. And he was told that yes, he could be held against his will. Thank God. He's a congressman.
Here, the other side.
Yeah. I always say no D in Rogers for Democrat, by the way, when you go to my website, wendyrogers.org. Wendy, like the hamburgers, Rogers, like Roy Rogers, but no D in Rogers.org. Anyway, go ahead.
Mayor, I have a question for you. Recently I saw Defense Secretary met with 3 or 4 Congress in session. When asked her to get your authority to go into Libya in the war powers, and he said from the United Nations. Now Congress has
The wheels on the bus.
But now there's some legislation coming before Congress that basically says, if you do it again, we're going to impeach you. There's also other concerns about the NDAA, et cetera, about basically shredding the Constitution. How do you feel about the President's some of these proposals, and what do you think needs to be done to curtail possible abrogation of the constitutional rights?
Well, my first inclination at your first description is, why do we need more legislation to enforce what is already the Constitution? Why do we need more laws to enforce the laws we have? So if we need to impeach, we need to impeach, irrespective of having to add more legislation. We need to enforce the law. And we need to enforce the law as regards immigration. We need to enforce the law as far as what our legislators and the president tried to go too far with. And it's kind of like mom's rules. I got them hanging in my kitchen. You know, unless you enforce the law and you show your adversaries what your intentions are, then they're going to run all over you. And this comes back to, how do we conduct a foreign policy? If we telegraph our intentions to our adversaries, they're going to know what we're up to. I mean, that's just common sense. And similarly, when we legislate, we need to enforce the Constitution and not have extra laws to say that we need to enforce the Constitution. Yes, sir.
Just about everybody says that they want to secure.
Everybody says they want to secure the border,
Right.
as do I.
But we could follow the question be for most of them to say, but we have to give it a way to become a citizen.
I'm not opposed to a guest worker program, but we need to enforce the law. And if you do secure the border and you do enforce the law, a lot of the quote-unquote problem will take care of itself. But if you have an incentive to and a magnet of, you know, free health care, free education, free breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're going to just constantly have people coming in. I was at Banner Desert when our son was diagnosed with his blood clotting problem that he ultimately was discharged for. I sat there all day, and I saw taxi after taxi dropping people off to use the emergency room. I was appalled, and it's a complete miscarriage of the freedom and generosity of our country. And we're spending ourselves into bankruptcy. We did a poll recently in the district. What's the number one issue on Republicans' minds in the district? The deficit. The number 2 issue, jobs. The number 3 issue, Obamacare, in our district, District 9. And there's no wonder. I went on my campaign 2 years ago for the state legislature, and I knocked on over 10,000 doors in 15 months' time, and I've knocked on hundreds since then in my congressional run. And without exception, people are absolutely worried that Obama will be reelected, and that the deficit will absolutely consume our country. You know, the old bumper sticker, don't tell Obama what comes after trillion. At Christmas time, my husband and our daughter and I went space available in the back of a KC-135 or a KC-10 tanker from Travis Air Force Base, California, to Hawaii for a vacation. We saw President Obama. I didn't go to see him, I just happened to see him in the chow hall at Marine Corps Air Station, Kaneohe. And we went there for Christmas dinner, Christmas Day. Make no mistake, he uses the military. He worked that room for 2 hours, glad-handing, putting his arm around all of the veteran families. He came up to my husband. He was a nice-looking guy, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, 60 years old. Comes up to my husband and calls him sir. That's crazy. My husband's a retired major. We got the commander-in-chief calling my husband sir. Merry Christmas, sir. It made my husband blush. We have a commander-in-chief, and make no mistake, I respect the position and the authority of the commander-in-chief of the United States of America. And I'm ready if he calls me tomorrow as a retiree. I could be called up, right? But the man who occupies the position doesn't get it. And we're losing our country because of it. And I'm not going to let that happen. More questions? Yes, sir.
Well, past few presidents have totally ignored the influx of illegal immigrants. They've done, from my perspective, they've impeded the efforts of the Border Patrol. Why is that happening? Why is recent presidents fomented illegal immigration? Why have so many members?
My opinion?
I'm sorry?
My opinion?
Yeah, in your opinion, yeah.
Pandering. The question is, why have presidents so far ignored the illegal immigration problem? I believe they're pandering to the burgeoning Hispanic community. I believe it's not only a lack of will and willingness to enforce the law, but they're afraid to be firm. And again, when you are a leader, you can't always be popular. You can't always do what's going to be appealing. You have to do what's right. And you're right. In succession, they've all not enforced the law. You have to enforce the law, and we can't be everybody's friend. And this is the problem we have abroad, too. We want to be liked by other countries. No, we don't. We're exceptional. We want to be the strongest. And if that means we're not going to be liked, then we're not going to be liked. Because our adversaries disrespect the soft underbelly that shows when we try to be liked. And we have this mistaken notion that being liked engenders respect. It's quite the opposite. I have a master's degree in national security studies. And I will tell you, and I've flown all over the world, many, many third world countries. I flew special airlift missions in Europe for 8 years. I flew under Clinton, and I flew under George H.W. Bush. And let me tell you, when I flew under Clinton, they messed with us. They stopped us from getting clearances. When I flew under George H.W. Bush, we got clearances. We were treated differently. The leadership starts at the top and goes all the way down, and it affects how our armed forces are treated and how we're able to do business diplomatically and internationally. It's all in the impression that the leadership sends its signals out on. And so if you have someone who's firm and with resolve, you are going to get more respect in the world than if you're trying to be liked. And that's kind of a simplistic answer, but again, I lived on the other end of those kinds of decisions. When I went to Europe to fly, it was 1988, and I left in 1996. I saw and experienced the complete changeover from the Cold War to the fall of the Berlin Wall. I flew missions through the Berlin corridors before the fall of the wall, which were very tense missions. They were low altitude. They were the old Berlin airlift corridors. And we saw Soviet Hind helicopters on the ground as we overflew them. We had to fly into Berlin Tempelhof Airport, which was the American airport. And those were tense missions. And then when the Berlin Wall came down, one of my jobs, my last job in the Air Force, I was in charge of all of the military-to-military contact programs at Headquarters U.S. Air Forces Europe. I had 13 former East Bloc nations. I had teams in each one of those nations. My nation was Romania. I traveled extensively in Romania. Those countries were yearning for what we had, and were willing, to do anything they could to come out of the communism that they were experiencing. We don't realize how much we're losing right now, year by year by year, by giving up what we have to the government. And in some respects, these East European nations and we were like two ships crossing in the night in terms of our politics. I get carried away, sorry.
I do the same.
I've lived it.
So have I. I've lived and worked 12 years in Europe for private companies, including a Swiss company in Germany. So I know what you're talking about. I understand it very well. So I know she would look like you're talking just to me. So
Thank you.
I've been there and done that.
Yeah.
I have a question about education. We were talking, I can't remember which one of you said it now, that what you do with the Department of Education is
You starve the beast.
starve the beast. Okay, down to 15%.
A year.
Okay. What do you mean 50% a year? You mean,
15% a year. You can't just.
you cut it back by
Yes, you can't just dissolve a department in record time. I mean, once the wheels of bureaucracy build up these behemoth organizations, I think it's fanciful to say that you can diffuse it and get rid of it in 1 year or 2 years or one term. So what you do is you defund it. You
over
defund
6
it.
or 8 years, you mean?
Hopefully.
Oh. So hopefully we'd have to keep power for 6 to 8 years long. But I'm thinking in terms of viruses. You know, when you don't take enough antibiotic, they always take all the antibiotic, because if you
It'll come back. Yeah.
you don't kill that thing, it'll come back. It'll be even worse than before.
But the whole thing with education is competition. That's what's missing. And when you have a good charter school like that one where the mother and the son were from, and a good charter school like
That was a public school.
they kept saying GCA. That's a charter school, right? Well, charter is public.
I believe that's I'm not, actually, maybe I should check that.
But the charter schools are public. I was the development director at Tempe Prep Academy.
No, actually, that's a regular public school, because she wouldn't be at the regular public school board meeting talking about it, because charter schools have their own.
They have boards
They have their
too.
own board.
Yeah.
So it's a regular public school.
Okay. But just to underscore the fact that charter schools are public, you know the difference though. In the state of Arizona, a charter school does not get money for the building. A charter school, the students only get a per capita amount of money. And in the case of the school where I was involved, Tempe Prep, each student got about $5,500 per kid for the year. And the school had to make the best to do with that. How much does a regular public school student get, roughly, in comparison? About $9,500 a year.
It does not prove to you that money isn't the solution.
Absolutely. The question is, doesn't that prove to you that money isn't the solution? Competition, parental involvement, class size, buy-in from the parents who sign. In my kids' school's case was, thou shalt not interfere with the teacher, thou shalt be involved at the school, and your kid will wear a uniform, and so forth. There are some fundamental things that work. But that's local. That should be a local issue. Education is a local thing. No more questions.
Any more questions?
Again, did everybody get our invitation? Marty?
Yeah, we have them.
The invitations are out front for the Tea Party gathering at, on the 31st of May. Come on out. We're going to have iced tea and snacks. Thanks. WendyRogers.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wendy Rogers, give her a hand. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And we've got a map up here, which I need to go take a look at it myself.
30th is the deadline to turn in your
forms,
10
yes.
signatures on your petition to become a precinct committeeman in your newly created precinct. And just so you know, if you look at the map, for example, the precincts are a lot bigger than they used to be. So there are more openings in the whatever precinct you're in. For example, CD9 used to have, what, 250 precincts and now has, what, 180 or something?
Around 145.
40? Yeah, so it's exponentially larger geographic.
Maricopa County cut the number of precincts in
Yeah.
half. They effectively doubled the size.